Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. Happy to be here with you on this program. We are going to have a good program today. And we have the election coming up. There's so much to talk about. There's so many things that are going on that are going to affect all of us. And that's whether or not, it doesn't matter if Joe Biden wins or if Donald Trump wins. It doesn't really matter if the Senate is held by Republicans or Democrats. There are things that are in motion in our nation that may be irrevocable. There are things that are going on that are going to affect us all, regardless of the party that you happen to believe in. And we're going to be discussing all of that and anything and everything that may be on your mind in this live stream. Now, for those who have never been here before, I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. But more importantly, what we do here is long-form political commentary. And it's something that we don't hear enough of. You're so used to seeing a headline, a 30-second soundbite, and we're supposed to grab all of the information from that. That's not real. So we go into it a little bit more depth here. I see we're up on YouTube and Facebook at this moment. Should be up on Periscope as well. Who knows how long that will be as the internet overlords listen to this and decide to censor it, as they usually do. Michelle Lee says, hello. Oh, and where we are. Voted today. Sucks. Your name was not on my ballot. Wishing you a ton of good vibes. Well, we're going to bring that up. And as you can see, your comments are vital. You can call into the show at 607-242-1582. And I'm just checking that. And that line is up and ready for you. Of course, you can comment on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and we'll be happy to hear from you. And Michelle, I know, for people who don't know, I am running for an elected office. I don't talk about it a lot on this program. You will see on several of the ballots, it's a county-wide race. You may see me depending on where you live. And I appreciate, you can always write my name in for president or any other elected office. But I'm glad that you did vote. Voting is absolutely important. And regardless of who you are voting for, please go out and vote, and we do suggest vote in person. And I'm going to explain why I believe that's the best way to do it, is to vote in person. But we're going to go over that. But I am thankful to see you here, Michelle, and I'm glad you're on with us. And just a quick little shot, Yesterday, if my voice sounds off, I was outside. It was like 32-degree weather for 6 hours, cooking for local residents. Yes, it was part of my campaign. So if I sound off a little bit, that's probably why. So let's get into it today. We know voting is going to be crazy. We've seen for weeks upon weeks, if not months now, we've heard about voting by mail is going to be a problem. Even absentee votes are going to be an issue. And it's true. This is coming from The Gothamist. And as always, links for all of the information I'm going to be presenting to you will be in the description in the YouTube video so that you'll be able to see all the information, read it for yourself, come to your own conclusions. But we do see that the Gothamist had mentioned that in Brooklyn, we saw voters were getting absentee ballots with the wrong names and information. We've heard about this happening in New Jersey. We've seen similar things happening in Ohio with 50,000 ballots. Please, if you haven't voted yet, and if you're not going to vote on November 3rd, then go in person. Many states, I think just about every state, has early voting available right now. I know it's happening in New York State and in my region. Please go out, vote in person if you possibly can. Yes, it may take 2 hours, but it's worth it because this is going to change the direction of our nation. We have been seeing a lot of news out there about how important this is. It's so important that, remember, according to the Democratic Party, there is no such thing as voter fraud, except when we hear from the Associated Press reporting that on October 30th, just 2 days ago, that there is people who are registering dead voters as Democrats. I mean, that's just groundbreaking here. You know, you keep hearing there is no voter fraud. There is no one who's going around registering dead people as Democrats. That doesn't happen. It's an internet meme, except it's true because we have the proof. In fact, we found it was in Florida that this happened, southern Florida and Broward County. And what we found out was out of 51 voter applications, new voter applications, that there were 30 out of 50 of those individuals were dead. Can you imagine that? So we literally know for a fact, as proven by the AP, in an investigation that's been ongoing for a couple of months. This started in the summer, this investigation. We've now seen it come out publicly, and we know for a fact dead people are being registered as Democrats for an election. Now, if we've seen that this investigation, as reported by the AP, has found a case, how many other cases are going on? How many in the news media that is highly restrictive, that is hiding a lot of information from us, from the public in general? How many cases are actually out there? How many investigations are actually moving forward? How many dead people are being registered as Democrats to vote in the 2020 election? And they're doing it by mail. They're doing it through absentee ballots. You know, some of the things that we've seen in Project Veritas, where a gentleman in Representative Ilhan Omar's district had 300 mail-in ballots that he was selling for payment. He was selling the votes. He was getting paid to register people with improper ballots. We just saw that Project Veritas revealed in Texas a woman claiming to be a Republican that was going around and changing people's votes to Democrat and having them sign it. Something that was admitted to be election fraud that will go and put her in jail. It's on the video from Project Veritas. Her actually manipulating voters and actually stating she was committing a crime and she knew it, and she was doing it for the Democratic Party, even though she's supposed to be a Republican consultant. So she had infiltrated the Republican Party and infiltrated as a Republican operative and was actively recruiting people to the Democratic Party, actively changing their ballots and manipulating it. There is a problem out there. So I absolutely tell you, go in person and vote. Vote early. And if you want to change your vote, as I had learned and I can only speak for New York State. So I want to be very clear here. I can only say in New York State, according to the Board of Elections, whom I spoke to directly and personally and got them on the phone, and they spoke to me and they researched it as I was live on the phone and said that if you wish to change your ballot based on all of the things that we have been seeing, you can do so voting in person. And they specifically said on November 3rd, so I can't speak to early voting, but in person on November 3rd, you can cast a ballot. It will override any mail-in ballot that you may have made. So if, based on the information we have seen about Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, about the voter fraud, about the many issues we're about to talk about, if you wish to change your vote, you can do so. And that means for whatever reason, for whatever candidate, that's up to you. But I want to make sure you know that. And again, that's in New York State. I cannot speak for any other state, as every state has different rules, and so there are different regulations on that. But I do know it is one of the top search terms since the final debate between President Trump and Joe Biden. So it's an important issue. I wanted to make sure you knew about it. Larry has mentioned, I'm watching you while in line for 2.5 hours and counting to vote. Larry, by the way, is in Oneida County. I happen to be in Broome County. So depending on the state you go to, depending to the voter location you go to, lines will be different. As an example, in Broome County, I know of, there's a location, there's 3 locations, one of them being the Broome County Library, which is, if you're looking to go out and vote, it is usually the shortest line of all the locations. I have had reports of people telling me it can be as short as 5 minutes. It can be as long as the longest I've been told is an hour and a half. But again, some people are going out in lines that are 2 to 3 hours long. So again, wherever you are, please contact the Board of Elections. Find out what is a location for you, what is the length of the line, but most importantly, go out and vote. Because 2 hours really isn't that much to guarantee your freedom and to ensure the best candidate possible is in there. And we could see 180 million people, one of the largest vote tallies in the nation in a couple of decades, where you're going to see the most voters ever, which means we may get the best choice possible for America, possibly. And again, we're going to also have to check out how many people are being subjected to, or how many cases of voter fraud are happening, because as the AP has shown us, it is in fact happening. So that's going to be a real tricky question, and it's going to bring up a lot of issues. Larry mentions, how many sites does Broome have? We only have 3 here, and it's horrible. For early voting, again, this is only early voting. Yes, Broome County has 3 locations as well. They have extended the hours of those locations, but there are only 3 locations in Broome County. And I think in most counties, that is true as well. Most counties, other than New York City or say Albany, most locations don't have enough population. And quite honestly, the Board of Elections did not expect as many people to show up in person in early voting. And that's why we're seeing such long lines. They weren't expecting so many people to come out early. A lot of them, especially in Democratic states, were expecting everyone to vote by mail-in ballot until such a time as we've seen so much fraud, so much abuse of the mail-in system, where we have ballots that are being tossed into ditches, that are being misnamed, that are inappropriate or pre-filled. I've heard of cases, and I cannot verify this independently, but I've heard of and I've seen credible sources that have said that they have found, they've seen individuals that have ballots that are pre-filled out, which is also illegal and a violation. So there are a lot of problems that are happening here, and it's not President Trump, it's not Joe Biden, it is across the board. Now, in most cases that I have been made aware of, yes, it has been primarily for the Democratic Party, but I have to assume an election across a nation of 330 million people, one of the largest land masses in continuous land masses of a nation in the world. I think it's probably happening on every party to some degree or another, to some extent. Usually it's well within the margin of error and very small, I believe. But this year, I don't know if I trust it. So again, I say vote in person, if at all possible. Larry mentions Monroe County has 12. Monroe County is a little bit large. Oh, no, actually, Monroe County isn't. I wish Oneida County would extend the hours. Again, it's a decision that was made by every county, and this is true across the United States. Each county, based on its normal voter turnout, based on its viewpoints, and possibly a bit of politicking, especially in the ultra blue states like New York State, especially in counties that may not be as Republican as other counties, you may see differences that favor one candidate or another. This is the American system. And more importantly, this is the flawed system execution. Let me rephrase that. It's the execution that is flawed that is causing problems. Because we have biases that are built into the election system that are promoting certain parties over others. And we've seen, as I said, Ilhan Omar buying votes. It's directly linked, according to Project Veritas, linked to the Ilhan Omar campaign, where they're buying 300 ballots. We've seen that, which is blatantly illegal. We have seen that it's happened in, as we saw in South Florida, the dead are being registered to vote. It's not a Halloween joke. It's happening. And we're seeing it across the country. So this is important. I see that John Restuccia mentioned, Mike, can you talk about this article? It's an article from Facebook. He has a link here. Yeah, I'm getting to that. I'm already getting to that, John. I've already heard about it. I'm going to be speaking about it. So I'll get to that in a moment. So you're seeing a link on the screen, folks. It's something that I've already looked into. I'm getting to it. But let me go further. So, and part of the manipulation that we are seeing is not merely on absentee ballots, the mail-in ballots, the dead being registered to vote. These are all critical issues that are going to affect this election that you can counter by voting in person. But it's not enough. What about the fear that has been baked into this system? And there is a lot of fear because you've heard people say, we're going to die. In fact, that's been the message of the year. You are going to die because of COVID-19. And it's unavoidable. And it's someone's fault. Now, you can say it's the Democrats' fault, or you could say it's the Republicans' fault. You can blame it on anyone you want. But quite honestly, COVID-19 is a virus. Excuse me. So no one controls a virus, except maybe China, because they manipulated that virus, apparently, according to some sources. But once a virus gets into the air, it mutates, it does what it does. There's really no way of stopping it. If we could stop viruses, there would be no flu every year. If we could stop viruses and bacteria, there would be no common cold. That's not the reality. The reality is these things happen. But the fear that goes with them is entirely different. And I pose to you, and hello, Joe Shapiro, I see you there. Thank you for joining us. The fear that we see out there is going over to Johns Hopkins, the number of deaths in America because of COVID-19. A number which is only at 971, excuse me, which is sad, but is incredibly small compared to the number of deaths that normally happen every day. It's incredibly small compared to the number of deaths that were happening in February and March when we had no information whatsoever. But the thing that they really get into in this is the fact that they're talking about the number of deaths, but that's not what the news media is talking to us about. They're talking to us about the number of cases. That's all you hear. There's been 9 million cases. There haven't been 9 million deaths. But in a news media where we have trained the public, or the public has become trained, to only hear the headline, to only get the impression, we get the fear. Well, if they're talking about 9 million cases, it must be deadly. Otherwise, why waste our time? And if it's we're being told it's a super bug. It's incredibly contagious. Everyone is getting this. 9 million people have it. It must therefore be deadly. Otherwise, why talk about it? Therefore, there must be 9 million people who have suffered from it, or died from it. And that's not true. But that is the fear that has been put out there. And think about it. There have been several polls that have been done where people think somewhere around 20 million people have died from COVID-19. People think that people have died in the tens of the millions in the United States. That is a lie. Yes, 200,000 people have died throughout the year in 2 seasons of COVID. And if you were to add up 2 seasons of the flu, you're talking about 120 million people, 120,000 people that would die in any given average year. So we're higher, but not extremely higher for 2 seasons of a virus. And we are now in the flu season again. We are in the time period in the fall going into the winter where we see more cases of flu, of cold, of these things affecting the public. We naturally and absolutely knew back in February that there would be more cases of COVID-19. That is actually natural and expected and predicted, and we were told this. But what we weren't told is, while the number of cases may be higher, just like the number of cases of flu and common cold are up seasonally as per normal, the number of deaths are actually down and decreasing. And that should be the important thing. That should be the story that's leading, that the number of deaths, even as cases increase, the number of deaths are decreasing, that they are not at the levels that we saw in February, in March, in January. It's not happening. So that tells you something. And Joe Shapiro mentions, this reminds me of the Resident Evil T virus replication, a lab manipulated virus that gets out into the air and vents. You know, it is kind of like something you would see in a movie. It's something like we see in a video game. The fear. Now that fear is meant to keep you in your home. It is meant to get you to have more mail-in ballots that are invalid and that are manipulated. That's a conclusion I have. You may disagree with that. You are free to comment about that, either on the comments here, on Facebook, on YouTube, or of course you can call in at 607-242-1582, and you can tell me, Mike, why I'm wrong. But I believe that this is playing together where we have seen an election that no one was prepared for. No county, no state, no federal agency has been prepared for the amount of people who are now voting, which is finally back up. Voter apathy is seemingly put off for this year. But we have more votes. We have more votes going through more systems that we have never tested before, that we have never tried before. And we're seeing problems. So that's very important to mention. And I think that's very important to keep in mind. That fear is one of the biggest factors that are being told to us, that is being sold to us. And that fear is meant to cause you to do certain things, to vote in a certain manner, and vote in a means that allows it to be manipulated, to keep confusion in the public. And where there is confusion, there is almost always corruption. You may think I'm wrong on that. You may think one side or the other is doing the corruption, but I guarantee you the corruption is universal. It's out there. And I am sure that there are Republicans doing it. I am even more sure that not only are Democrats doing it, they're doing it in larger numbers because we have proof of that. And I have yet to see any of the left-leaning agencies showing us the corruption of dead people being registered as Republicans. It's not happening. I'm not seeing Republicans putting out videotape of, the left-leaning organizations putting out information, showing us video of Democrats trying to illegally change people's votes and signing their absentee ballots. I'm not seeing it. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm saying I'm not seeing it. So it seems this is all being manipulated to generate votes for Joe Biden. Which brings me to another thought. We're seeing all this manipulation, and we're seeing it culminate in some of the most obvious and clear indications that the news media and means of information transfer across the country and across the globe has one purpose in this election, and that is to get people to make a vote for one candidate, and that is Joe Biden. You say, Mike, well, that's an unfair statement. How can you come to that conclusion? And I will show you. The name is Twitter. The CEO is Jack Dorsey, and that is a fact. We saw him at he was speaking before the Senate meeting, a judicial meeting, and he was speaking, and he had to talk about why Twitter is unfairly targeting, censoring, shadow banning the public, leading them on a one-way path to the left, and if you happen to not be there, to punish you for it. And a lot of people are talking about those algorithms that Twitter uses to do that. Now, here's the really interesting thing. The image I am showing you right now, everyone's saying, oh my God, look at what Twitter has just done. Look at the bias we just now see in Facebook, in YouTube, in Google. And my answer to you is, it's not new. This is not a brand new situation. This is not something that just happened in 2020. You have been manipulated. The public has been manipulated to some degree for years. And you say, Mike, how can you possibly say that? How can you possibly prove that? Where is the source that leads you to that conclusion? This article is from 2018. In the September 2018, leading up to the 2018 midterm elections, Twitter was brought before the U.S. Congress, and he had to explain why his platform, Twitter, unfairly reduced the visibility of 600,000 accounts, including members of Congress. And as it so happened, it seems that all of those individuals that we know of those 600,000, including members of Congress, every reported case that we could find was a conservative or a Republican. It didn't happen to the Democrats. It didn't happen to the far left. As far as we can tell, including Silk and Diamond and various members of Congress, there was all Republicans and conservatives. This was in 2018. And we've had articles and articles, and we've shown it on the show more than a few times, where we've seen people identify that Google, because of the way it does its search algorithm, it eliminates sources and information unless you know how to very specifically find it to be able to find out what's actually happening. That if you're not going to sources like the BBC, like Israeli Times, like the Wall Street Journal, Investors Daily Business, just a huge swath of information out there, including independent sources like Joe Rogan, like Tim Pool, like Louder with Crowder, like Ben Shapiro, these non-traditional means of information transfer and sharing of evidence, like this show itself, you're going to be denied information that is important to you. And Joe Shapiro says, if votes were votes, then one for one vote would count, and the Electoral College wouldn't be needed on a basis towards the big battlegrounds between the popular votes. There's bias towards smaller states and tyranny of direct democracy. This is preventing anti-majorities outcomes. Again, a reference of the dead votes, the movie Black Sheep, Chris Farley, David Spade. If I understand that correctly, Joe, the Electoral College is vital because if we didn't have an Electoral College, the manipulation that we see from Twitter and YouTube and Facebook over time, in conjunction with the manipulation of votes, like the dead voters, as we see from the Associated Press, would literally lock out the public, and it would allow the complete manipulation to elect specific individuals, regardless of what the majority of America wants, and remove all fairness of elections. And that's been shown and documented many, many times. So I agree with that. Nope, that's not a text there. Okay. Just trying to make sure I'm keeping up with the text messages. But let me show you what I'm talking about here, because Twitter is a great example of what we're seeing throughout the nation here. That they are willing over time, consistently and repeatedly, along with Facebook, along with Google, which includes YouTube, where you're seeing that if you don't know specifically how to find the information, how to use search terms to target the information, that you're not going to be able to find it. that even on YouTube, if you don't know or you have never found some of these sources like Tim Pool, like myself, like Ben Shapiro, like Joe Rogan, if you don't know to look and target for certain shows, you're not going to find them. They are banned. They are hidden. And we know this because we've seen Twitter do this. Real Clear Politics just notified us. Excuse me, folks. Through the Federalist, and the Federalist is not small, but it's definitely not mainstream. And the Federalist identified that Twitter suspended a U.S. border chief because Twitter didn't like what he had to say. This is an agent of the government. This is an official. It's not an elected post, but this is an appointment, an individual for the United States government, speaking on the policy and actions of the United States government and the success of that action in the United States. And it is suppressed. Something that we have seen that Twitter has done with the New York Post, that we have seen various entities and individuals being silenced, removed for the most arbitrary reasons. The Ayatollah Khomeini of Iran can make death threats as a nation and insist that people go out and murder, inciting fear, violence, intimidation, and death. The Ayatollah can do that on Twitter, but the President of the United States can't say that, well, just about anything. He has been suppressed without asking for any of those things, just talking about his opinion. And we have seen that being suppressed. We have seen actual evidence of corruption in our government, in elected officials and individuals seeking the highest office in this nation. Credible information. And we've seen that out there, and Twitter and YouTube and Facebook will suppress that information, but they will let you hear about megalomaniacal, authoritarian governments that are wishing death to individuals because of their mere preference of religion and political status. That is not the American way. That is terrifying, and that has deadly, absolutely deadly consequences. Now, as I'm sure we are all very, very aware, and I'm going to get to the comments in just a second, we are all aware about Senator Cruz speaking just on the 28th, speaking to Twitter, and this is on the screen, Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter. And as we got this is live coverage from C-SPAN. And we hear this and I'm going to try and get this up here for you. Bear with me 1 second, folks. 1 second. I want you to hear this, and I want to make sure that you're going to hear this clearly. So bear with me a second. I just need to change something in my system for the sound settings so that you can hear this properly. Yeah, that should do it. So this is Jack Dorsey, as put out by C-SPAN. I've gone to a specific section in this, and I want you to hear this.
You can censor the New York Post, you can censor Politico, presumably you can censor the New York Times or any other media outlet. Mr. Dorsey, who the hell elected you and put you in charge of what the media are allowed to report and what the American people are allowed to hear? And why do you persist in behaving as a Democratic super PAC, silencing views to the contrary of your political beliefs?
Let's get
okay. That's a fair allegation. And it's an allegation that is based on their actions, not just in 2020, but as I showed you, their actions in 2018. Censoring, silencing, manipulating the information that the public is able to receive. How in the world can you make a valid, clear choice in your election if you can't even find out the information that would allow you to make a choice? That's terrifying. And I'm not talking about the difference between I watch CNN versus I watch Fox News or I read the BBC News. That's a choice. And if you choose to only look at one news outlet, you have to understand that you're going to get the bias of that singular news outlet. But where we have platforms, supposed platforms, that allow us to hear information from all of our neighbors, from all of the people across the nation and across the world, that may give us influence and opportunities to learn new information that, say, CNN editors don't want to talk about. Maybe something that doesn't want to be, the editors at the Interpret do not wish the public to know about, from a Greenwald, as an example. We have that opportunity and they're taking it away from us. How can you make an honest choice if you don't know the information? Besides, shows like mine, and there are several of them, and they're on the left as well. But guess what? If we keep seeing this edited, how can you be sure you're making an honest, correct choice if the information is denied you? Let me go back to the comments here. John Rastusha mentions, in these places like Twitter and Facebook, they have the same problems as universities. There is no diversity of thought, which I agree with absolutely. And we have spoken about that many, many times. I'm going to get into that in a second. Jason from Bing mentions, we are a constitutional republic created with federalism in mind. Yes, we are. That isn't what is told to us from the news media. That is not the way that is reflected in the conversation with news media, but that is true. Joe Shapiro mentions purging corruption, scaring the people to vote one way. Yes, that is what we are seeing. Again, if you are on the left, if you are a part of the far left, if you're a member of BLM, Indivisible New York, if you're a part of the Citizen Action, Antifa, if you're part of Veterans Against War, I can name a dozen different little organizations that are out there, all of them on the far left, all of them progressive, many of them Democratic Socialists, or if you're even in Democratic Socialists of America, please, if you think I'm wrong, if the evidence I am providing to draw my conclusions from are incorrect, tweet me, send me a message, just like everyone else on Facebook, on YouTube, or call into the show at 607-242-1582. Unlike Twitter, I do not censor people who want to have their voice out there. With caveat, obviously we're talking about a subject, vulgarity is not allowed, and I want you to stay on topic, but let's go for it. If you think I'm wrong, if you think the sources I am providing are incorrect, that somehow I am not giving enough information, that I am somehow editing a crucial element of context or information, then please call in. Let us all know about it. Let us learn. This is not definitive. This is a conversation I'm having with you. And this is the evidence I have to prove the position I see. You can tell me I'm wrong. You can tell me that I have missed something. Let's find out. Because if you're right, we all deserve to know that. Unlike Joe Biden, who says we don't deserve to know who he's going to pick for the Supreme Court, that we don't deserve to understand his policies, that we are voting for him about. If you vote for Joe Biden, you are voting for his policies and what he is going to instill into America. And he is unwilling to tell you what that is. How can you judge and make a proper decision for him if you don't know what he stands for? If you don't understand what he is attempting to do? Is he going to pack the courts? He won't tell you, because according to Joe Biden, as we have shown on the show in video footage unedited from credible news sources, he has said directly, you do not deserve to know. That's terrifying. But if you think on the left, if you're a member of the left or lean left, or if you happen to be like Larry Tarnout, who wants to try and pick at everything I say, fantastic. Show me the evidence. Show me your position. Show me how I am wrong. Let's go through that. The American public deserve to have that discussion in detail to understand what is going on. and to make the best choice possible, not just in the presidential election. We're talking about the Senate. We're talking about the House of Representatives. We're talking about the local elections. You need to know what's going on. We need to call out individuals, candidates, kind of like on a local level. I'll give you an example, like Bob Wessler, who hides from the public, will not tell the public what they stand for. They are hiding. Is that worth voting for? What about on, this going up towards the federal and state level? Let's talk about Congress. We're talking about like Anthony Brindisi, an individual who is on record as flip-flopping his position, saying one thing, doing another, having a voting record that doesn't match his advertised message. His 30-second sound bites in commercials does not match his voting record. We need to know that. But if you think I'm not understanding that somehow I have missed the context, please come onto this program right now. Send me the text, send me the message, go ahead and call in. The public deserves to know that, because I don't see where I'm missing the context, where I see in 2018, Facebook, Google, and Twitter are called before Congress because they are acting in a manner to manipulate the public and manipulate elections. And then we see when they again in 2020 are called out for this, and they deny that they have the power and influence to manipulate what we have already seen them manipulate, like the New York Post, and denying that, I have to worry about that. And I have to say something is going on. As we see them go to the extreme of actually denying the public from hearing from government officials talking about the actions of the government and whether it's working or not for the public. This is critical stuff. And by the way, and I'm going to get to your comment in a moment, Joe. And by the way, what we found out is that as we saw Jack Dorsey, and I'll show you his image here for a second. I want to make sure. As we heard this man, Jack Dorsey, CEO of Twitter, as he said that the public was able, that the information that he had censored, that his organization under his control actively censored the public, denied the freedom of the press, the First Amendment rights of an independent, credible news agency that he denied the public to hear from. He goes on to say that had been corrected, that the public was able to see the actual credible information from a credible news agency, the New York Post. And what we found out is he said it was free. And on that same day, at the same time and afterwards, he lied to the public. He lied to the public. He lied and perjured himself. And in particular, perjury, just so you know, is 18 U.S. Code 1621. I want you to be able to see this. I want you to look it up for yourself. This is perjury. Point 2, Section 2. In any declaration, certificate, verification, or statement under penalty of perjury, like speaking to Congress, as permitted under various sections of the code, willfully subscribes as true any material matter which he does not believe to be true, is guilty of perjury and shall, except as otherwise expressly provided by law, be fined or imprisoned not more than 5 years or both. Which means that when Jack Dorsey told the public and the Senate under perjury, under penalty of perjury of law, when he said that the blackout, the media blackout, the denial of information, the violation of First Amendment had been stopped at Twitter, and then we find out he lied, he perjured himself. And we know that this is absolutely true because according to the Wall Street Journal, on October 30th, that was the day, 2 days after his Senate hearing, that was the day that Twitter finally unlocked the New York Post article, which means he perjured himself, which means he needs to go to jail. And I'm going to get into what are the consequences of this election in just one second. What are the consequences of what's happening there? But I want to make it very clear. I advocate for Jack Dorsey and any other of the CEOs, any of the members, leadership of Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Google, who have lied and have been proven to perjure themselves, as we have seen here, or have shown a pattern of lying and purposefully manipulating the public, need to go to jail. And I guarantee you, if we can throw them in jail, then we will start seeing some changes. Let's fine them a couple $2 billion for each person in the world that has access to their systems that they have manipulated. Let's punish them by charging them with a fine for at least $1 for every single person in the world that has access and or uses their system. And then let's see what's going to happen. I guarantee you, you see Twitter lose $7 billion. You see Google lose billions of dollars for the number of interactions they have every day. And I guarantee you they will change. It's an idea. Comments. So, Joe Shapiro says, Biden, 47 years of change, and why is he known for? What is he known for? 8 years of vice presidency. What's he known for? We need, quote, need change campaign, end quote. Lots of waste and byproducts for this new green plan. But he is for the Americans, and his institutions are for the Americans public to benefit for the American public and jobs. Yes, I believe in essence, Joe, I agree with you that after 47 years of being in office, what is it that Joe Biden is presenting the public? What is he offering? What is he saying to us? That he has the answer to fix everything after 47 years? If he had the answer, why didn't he tell us? Why is he, if he has the answer to fix the economy, if he has the answer to fix race relations in America, why are you holding back and not telling us? Give us the information. Isn't it more important for America to be a more fair and free nation? Isn't that more important than an election? And if you gave it to the American people, wouldn't the American people appreciate that enough and realize that you have such great leadership that we would want to elect you? If you actually have the answer, give it to us. And I would tell you that, if someone could fix the economy and guarantee and show us how we could guarantee to have freedom in our capitalism and have more fair racial interactions in the government, in our lives, I'd be willing to vote for that. And I'm a Republican. I am a conservative Republican. Hardcore. I'd vote for that. Why wouldn't you tell us? Why are you doing the same thing you did to Ice Cube, which is say, vote for me first, and maybe I will get to your idea to improve the lives of black people in America, and therefore everyone in America, after the fact? I'm sorry, that's a bait and switch. That's an out and outright lie, I believe, because you've been saying it for 47 years. I've got the answer, but I won't tell you until you vote. What did Nancy Pelosi tell us? Do you remember? Nancy Pelosi said, we have to pass the law to know what's in the law. We have to elect Joe Biden to find out what Joe Biden will do. I'm sorry. No, that's a bait and switch. That's the worst con game that's ever out there. And this is the most successful con game because it's being promoted by everyone in the news media. It is being promoted by the internet to tell you, yeah, that's okay. Go ahead and buy it, even though you don't know what you're buying. It's a blank contract, and we're going to fill in all the details after you sign on the dotted line. If someone said that to you and they were selling you a car, you'd say no, and you'd walk away. You'd go to some other car dealership. Why are you buying it? Because it's a political party. Because you have the same political party preference. They're still giving you an empty blank contract and saying, sign on the dotted line and be accountable and held to whatever we decide to fill in the blank with. Doesn't make sense. So Jason from Bing goes on to say, he says, have you seen anyone come up with a bill to fix this problem with social media? No. And there is no easy fix to it. Again, the 30-second approach to politics doesn't work. You can't say, well, Bill, this is Section 230, which allows the power, the overwhelming monopoly and power of Google, Twitter, and Facebook. That power is tricky because there is also an essence, a core of freedom, of the freedom of the press, of the First Amendment that lies within that we want to protect. And that doesn't necessarily mean that, and protecting it doesn't, I really don't believe means the government comes in and the government is actually running Google, Facebook, and Twitter. No, I don't agree with that. But it doesn't mean that we don't hold them accountable for what they're doing. They have to have penalties. Otherwise, they're running rampant right now. They are literally breaking election law. They are literally manipulating elections. This is illegal, and they are doing it, and they have to be held accountable to that. So yeah, we have to work on this, but that's something that would require a lot of conversation. Joe Shapiro mentions, with all the changes under current administration, how much has changed in differences that we won't agree, but we have made changes for the better? That's a tricky question. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about the question. Treason for others before and deceit when are those not mentioned to be held for their actions? Why are people afraid of the big stick but willing to follow yes men? Because it's easy. It's easy because you don't have to think about it. Because you don't have to be held accountable for your decision. If I sign a blank contract, I can't be, I don't have to think about it, and I can't really be held accountable. It's not my fault that they decided to take my house. It's not my fault that I have no more freedom because I didn't know that they were going to do that. They lied to me. Oh, I couldn't have known they were going to lie because it was a blank contract that I gave them, that I authorized, that I signed on to. Oh, woe is me. It's not my fault. Yeah, it is. You signed the contract. It's your fault. You're accountable. You are morally as guilty as anything they put in there because you said yes. So yeah, that's the problem. He goes on to say, I'm on an iPad. Sorry, things aren't typing correctly on the touchscreen. It's worded wrongly. I understand. And that happens. I mean, autocorrect does it to everybody. But I'm just trying to make sure I understand the essence of what you're saying, because I understand sometimes it doesn't come out because of, hey, these systems, which goes beyond just Facebook, just Twitter, just YouTube. Yeah, it includes, whether you're talking about Verizon or you're talking about, Apple and all the different providers that are out there, Sprint and so forth. They have their restrictions built in here too. They have their manipulations built in too. Autocorrect is going to find the words for you. So you don't have to think about what you want to say. You just have to fill in the right auto choice, which may not be what you want to say or may not convey the idea clearly because they're giving you the idea. They're changing what you're saying and changing what it means. I see that happen when I'm writing on my tweets all the time, where we're seeing autocorrect trying to change the word I'm saying and coming up with an entirely different word with an entirely different meaning, with an entirely different idea behind it. And they're trying to submit that into my words and my thoughts and change implicitly, subtly change where I'm going, what thought I'm trying to convey. That's a problem. But you add that problem with also someone who's denying you information, actively blacking out critical information that they know would change your decisions. And we have politicians who are supporting that because they're doing the same thing. When Joe doesn't tell you what he's going to do about packing the court, and we have at the same time news media and the internet denying you the opportunity to find out that he's there is corruption, a valid case of corruption against him, and they're telling you to vote for him anyway in a manner through mail-in votes that we have proof of corruption of. You know, you notice the common theme is corruption, corruption, corruption at every one of these levels. Why do you think the result's going to be anything but corrupt? That there's some inherent problem here? Because there is. At least that's how I understand it. Maybe you think I'm wrong. Maybe you think, Mike, you just didn't get it. It's not all leading to corruption. There isn't only corruption in here. There is, this is absolutely wonderful. We should deny people actual information. We should deny people answers to questions. We should pick the words for people instead of allowing them to speak in their own words and to convey the ideas they have in their minds. No, we need to do that. And if you say to me that that's what you think, then you're telling me you believe in not democracy, not a constitutional republic. You're telling me you believe in an autocratic dictatorship, which would be socialism. Understand what we are actually looking for, what we are agreeing to. Let me get to something here. So I've been leading up to this, and I want you to understand what some of the consequences of what we're seeing here. Now, for a few shows, I have been talking about the fact that there may be a civil war, that there is a problem that's coming down the road, something that is, in fact, I think it was the last 3 shows in a row, I have said very clearly that regardless of whoever wins the election, and which we may not know until November 10th, but whomever wins the election for the presidency, President Trump or Joe Biden, we are going to see the exact same result in that we're going to see riots across this nation, that there is going to be no difference. In fact, I said that, and I this is my prediction, and I predict it again, that within an hour of the announcement that President Trump has won the election, which I believe will be by 55% in the popular vote, that once President Trump has won, in an hour, we will see Democratic Socialists and the far left and progressives across the nation start rioting, burning down cities, and killing individuals. I hate it. It's a dark, horrible message, but that is the prediction I have in full. And I don't think anyone else in the media is willing to go and give you all of the consequences of this election. Excuse me. And some of them will say it in part, in pieces, but I'm giving it to you all at once. The dominoes that immediately fall after the words, Trump has won the 2020 election. He is in his second term of the presidency. We will see an hour later, maybe even faster, spontaneous unrest across the nation, organized by Democratic Socialists, progressives, groups like Antifa and Black Lives Matter. That's what we're going to see across the nation. But here's the other part. If we hear Joe Biden has won the presidency for the 2020 election, you are going to hear, and I initially said within a week, I now need to correct that. Within an hour, you're going to see riots and violence in the same exact manner by the same exact people across the nation. The same Democratic Socialists, the progressives, the Antifa, the BLM, the Citizen United, the Indivisible New York. Those same groups are going to go right on out, and just like as if it were President Trump, they are going to riot and burn down and destroy buildings and endanger people's lives exactly the same as if it were President Trump. And I know this because when I go and I look, I see Walmart saying that they're going to pull guns and ammo because they are citing civil unrest. They are afraid of what's civil unrest? Well, according to the Associated Press and their guidelines, their guideline is very, very clear. Okay. Where is it? I want you to read this. It's a very important line. The AP suggests replacing the word riots with, quote, milder terms such as unrest. This is what the Associated Press has mentioned. And the exact quote here is, focusing on rioting and property destruction rather than underlying grievances has been used in the past to stigmatize broad swaths of people protesting against lynching, police brutality, and for the racial justice going back to the urban uprisings of the 1960s. Wait a minute. That's not what's happening here. A riot is a crime. Minnesota is the result. The current status in Minnesota is the result of rioting, not of unrest, of rioting, of individuals committing crimes of arson, of attempted murder, of destruction of property, of stealing. These are crimes. They are not an unrest. They are not a disruption. This is not some kind of indecisive action. This is crime. This is criminal activity. We've seen in Pennsylvania, a police officer was run over by a car. That is not an unrest. That is a crime that was committed during a riot. It is a crime. It is not peaceful assembly. It is not guaranteed by the First Amendment. This is a crime. And Walmart is afraid of the extent of that crime because they're expecting riots. Now that we know what the key word is from the Associated Press, the Associated Press style book, which is how are things written. For people who don't understand, the Associated Press style book is the guideline for the major news media to how they word things. So instead of illegal alien, as an example, an individual who has broken the law, therefore illegal, and that person who is not native to that location. Because countries have borders, states have borders. Therefore, when you enter an area against the law, illegal, and you are not native to the area you are entering, therefore you are an alien, you are an illegal alien. You are not undocumented because the document you are missing is an illegal access. Therefore, you are illegal. They use the term undocumented. It is wrong. It is a nicety. It is a way to manipulate you to think that this isn't so bad. It is an actual crime. They use undocumented to take away the element of this is criminal. This is something that is punishable by law. So they use undocumented. And instead of saying alien, because that is someone foreign to you, and that means that they are not connected to you. So rather than have you understand these are foreigners, individuals who are not connected to you, that have no connection to your lifestyle and your culture, that these people are instead undocumented workers or undocumented migrants. They weren't invited in. They have no legal reason to be there. They are bringing with them foreign ideas because they're not coming to become part of America. They're being wherever they came from in America. There is a big difference. There is a massive difference. We have people who legally come to America and become natural. We have millions of people who become naturalized citizens every year because America is better than everywhere else they have been and places that they're escaping. They're trying to become part of America. We have many illegal aliens, and I'm not saying all of them, but we have many illegal aliens that are coming into America to be in America, to use the resources and the opportunity of America, even as second-class citizens, even as second-class workers. It is so much better here than wherever they're coming from that they want to use us for those resources for that better life without adding to the sum total of America and benefiting us. So that's a big difference. And I want to make sure that was clear. But here's the thing that really gets me, and this is what John Rastusha was mentioning, and then I'll get to some of the comments. We see that this unrest is now going to the next level. Why do I say it's riots? Because we see that the left, that the progressive group shut down DC, is going to strategically direct action to advance justice and hold officials accountable. Well, what in the world does that mean? They have targeted groups of individuals for punishment, not because they broke the law, not because the progressive organization has any right of law, but because they want to punish people who don't agree with them. Because I said illegal alien, that I'm somehow an evil person, they don't like me, and I would be on their list of someone to attack because feelings. That's just incredible. Hang on. This is incredible, folks. It's terrifying. This is terrifying that we see individuals who are manipulating, literally manipulating the way words are being used, using words like unrest instead of riot, where crimes are being committed, and that we have groups, progressive groups, that are saying we're going to plan out and orchestrate a what's the word I'm looking for? A conspiracy to commit crimes. And this is okay. This is considered all right. Democratic socialists are planning to go out and to actively disrupt the lives of individuals. Back in Ithaca, and I did this last week, in Ithaca, the Democratic Socialists of America in Ithaca took the opportunity to disrupt the other American citizens by attacking them, by physically assaulting them, by committing crimes. And here's another progressive group that is going out there saying we need to actively assault and disrupt a bunch of 31 businesses because of the mere reason that they have a feeling about these groups, that they don't feel like they like them because they don't agree with them. So assaulting them, disrupting them, another key word, another way of changing the meaning, disrupting them. Well, assault is a disruption. Denial of the ability to live my life is a disruption. We have had civil wars in the world. You know what? The taxes on tea in America is a disruption to life. Taxation without representation is a disruption of life. We had a civil war with England, which is why we have our nation. Slavery, ending slavery was a disruption of life. We had a war about that too. These guys are looking to disrupt lives, to destroy lives, to manipulate lives because their feelings are hurt. That's upsetting. That's insane. That is incredible. And we have the evidence that they have said this, that they are going to do this. They have mapped it out. They have told you ahead of time that regardless of who wins, and it is incredibly important here because they mention that it is regardless of who wins. And I have it here. I forget the exact line here in the article, but it is their statement that regardless of who wins, whether it's Trump or Biden, they are going to go forward and they are going to attack people that have different ideas than theirs. Something that is expressly and absolutely protected in the United States. It is the happiness rule. You have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That is not qualified by if the progressives like it, if socialism will allow it. That is not the description. That is not in our Constitution. That is not one of our absolute rights given by God as defined, as we see listed in the Constitution. You have the right to life, liberty, and happiness. It is the pursuit of happiness clause. That's what I was looking for. Pursuit of happiness clause. That is not limited or defined or redirected or re-understood, recontextualized by progressives. They don't get to change that. They don't get to put limits on that. They don't get to define what is happiness for you. Not in America, they don't. Not in America as it exists now as a constitutional republic. But they want to change that. And they are willing to use the means of disruption, which means riot, which means a crime. It is not unrest. It is a crime. And they will enact crimes against you because you have not pledged and submitted to them enough. You and I and everyone in America should be concerned, terrified, and worried. Let me get to some of the comments here. So, okay, he goes, and it's been said also that Trump is racist and against minorities. How many bills has he signed for restoring HBCU or historically black colleges and in executive orders? Yes, there is a disconnect between the accusations on President Trump and his actions. That's absolutely true. They don't correlate. They're not the same. It's one of the reasons why Ice Cube and Kanye West and Waka Flocka and Lil Wayne and so many other individuals are coming to the president and our President Trump and working with him to improve their communities because it's worthwhile, because it's getting action, because he's actually doing things and rather than promising things. Joanne goes on to say, as the president seems to be against everyone and white supremacy, and isn't he going to these areas where there's issues with such said riots, and my president will commence again. I'm waiting for the fire sale with all the influences. Now, Joe uses a lot of movie references. So when he says fire sale, I believe he's referring to the one with John McClane. John McClane's movie. I have it in my head. I see it. I can't think of it. Die Hard. That's it. Die Hard 4, which is about the fire sale, destruction of America, because of removal of things like power, internet communications, and so forth. Yes, President Trump has repeatedly, consistently, long before he became a president, said that he's against white supremacy, that he denounces it, that he is actively against it. And yet we see people promoting that lie, which again is in the favor of news media. We see riots are going on, and they're going to happen. Jason from Bingham says, 55% popular vote. Wow, if that happens, your tab is on me that night. Honestly, and people say, Mike, how can you say that President Trump would win by 55%? Well, I'll use the most basic thing. Forget the polls. Throw the polls out. I don't care about the polls. People lie to polls on a regular basis. We saw that in 2016. So how do I get 55%? Real simple. In the popular vote. Because when Joe Biden has an event, he has 10 to 100 people at that event. And very often, he will have 50 to 100 to 200 people who are supporting President Trump just outside of his event, where thousands of people will line up the road that Joe Biden is going to travel down to get to his event that's going to have 10 people, but 2,000 people with Trump signs are all lined against that road. When President Trump has an event, he has 20,000 people. He has 300 boats full of people traveling up and down the rivers throughout the nation on a weekly basis throughout the entire summer. In fact, we have right now President Trump, just last week, a 96-mile long car rally supporting President Trump and Back the Blue, that was in Arizona last week. 96 miles. How many cars takes up 96 miles? And you cannot show me a single thing that matches that for Joe Biden. You can't. This is Pima County, Arizona. 96 miles of people in cars waiting in lines. You think it's a long time to wait? Larry Tarnout mentioned it's 2 hours to wait and vote. These people aren't even voting. They're just out saying, I support the president, President Trump. And it's a 96-mile long procession, an expression, a peaceful assembly, the First Amendment. And in that peaceful assembly in Arizona, no one died. No buildings were destroyed. No property was damaged. No one's life was disrupted. That says a lot. When I see that week after week, day after day, tens of thousands of people in Lancaster, PA, where there had been riots previously from Antifa and the far left, riots in that city. President Trump went to Lancaster. There was a 36-hour prior notice. 3 days beforehand, less than 3 days beforehand, people suddenly found out, hey, President Trump wants to come to your area. And with 36 hours, less than 2 days prior notice, 20,000 people showed up at the event. 20,000 people in less than 2 days said, oh, President Trump's coming. I'm going to be there. I have yet to hear a single time that Joe Biden, anywhere in the nation, at any point in the process, from the time that he was a nominee to the point of right now, there has never been an event that Joe Biden has attended, that Joe Biden has been the headline for, that has generated that same response, not even once. And I believe when we have that much of a public, and that's in areas where the polling, we have seen this in areas where the polling is saying that Joe Biden is going to win by a landslide, in areas that say that Joe Biden is going to win by 20% or more. And yet Joe Biden can't get more than 10 to 100 people to show up in those areas that he is winning with a landslide. And President Trump is getting 20,000 people to show up. Even in the bluest of blue states, he gets tens of thousands of people to show up at his events. They has car rallies and boat rallies of hundreds of people in areas that we are told he is absolutely going to lose the election. Michael J. mentions 400 boats in August on Cayuga Lake, not including a rally on every Finger Lake. Well, there you go. Imagine that. In the bluest of blue states, in New York State, on Cayuga Lake, in this summer, 400 boats came together to support President Trump. No one has a boat rally for Biden. No one. Actually, I believe I did see a photo of one guy in a rowboat. One. In a rowboat. So that gives you, when I'm seeing that kind of disparity in the bluest of blue states, where we have that much of an outspoken outcry to support one president, this candidate versus another, yeah, I have to believe that that's going to be the case. Ed Patrick mentions, replying to Michael J., Trump train of hundreds of cars today. Yes, that's what I'm talking about here, Ed. There's Arizona last week. And you're mentioning that that's right, in upstate New York. There are actually several rallies. There's a rally going on right now, just north of me, where there are expected, I believe it's 100 to 200 cars that are in a train rally without violence, without anything being burned down, without anyone's rights or lives being impeded. And that's in the bluest of blue states, in New York State. It's happening right this second. Not for Biden. And you want to tell me that Biden's going to win in a landslide? Show me the evidence. Without using a poll. Without using a poll, show me evidence that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have an overwhelming, show me even an interest. Show me people that are even interested in them, not in and I don't want to hear about, oh, Orange Man bad. Throw that out. Don't tell me that they hate President Trump. They think he's an evil person. No, I want to see a purely pro-Biden. That's all I want to hear. Pro-Biden, not anti-Trump, pro-Biden. Show me any event anywhere in the nation where he's pulled in more than 100 people. Because I'm not aware of it. So Joe Shapiro, so are these garbage ballots going to be counted? Garbage ballots are like the Clinton emails. They just don't disappear. No, bad ballots don't get counted. If you have an extra mark on your mail-in ballot, it is technically, doesn't matter if it's just a little, you bump your pen against the page somewhere on the page. It is an invalid ballot. It will not be counted. People have disinfected, and I've covered this over the last couple of videos. People have disinfected their ballots in California. They don't count. People have put hand sanitizer on the ballots. They don't count. If you disrupt that page in any manner, any marking, any alteration to that page, then it's thrown out. So garbage ballots don't count. If you throw a ballot into the garbage, into a ditch, it doesn't count. So that's the way the law is, and that's the problem. So we're covering a lot of ground here, but I think it's truly terrifying that we have seen actively people are saying that they're going to disrupt, destroy, they're going to attack American citizens and American businesses because the Democratic Socialists have a particular point of view, because they have a feeling. And because anyone who doesn't agree with their feeling needs to be punished. It's kind of like the red flag laws, which I've talked about many a time last year, which have been hidden from the public. Last year, New York State took on the red flag laws, made it a reality, and 129 people had their property taken by the government without ever committing a crime. These people some of them had their children taken from them because they did not commit a crime. And at this moment, the New York State Office of Court Administration will not and have not provided any documentation on how many people are being affected by this. Because you don't need to know, apparently. Because the news media doesn't want to tell you, apparently. But yet, these are people who are impeding your life for you having done nothing more than live your life. That is terrifying. Excuse me. So Jason from Bing says, are there more Trump supporters and new supporters at events than in 2016? Yes. Consistently, incredibly, yes. There are more people that are visibly Trump supporters than in 2016. Michael J. says, they are having that problem in, oh no? Do you mean Ohio? I know many states are having these problems. It's across the country. Now, again, let me say it again. If you disagree with me, that's okay. If you think I am completely wrong, that's okay. If you think I've missed something or I am miscontextualizing something, contact. Send us a message on Facebook, on YouTube. Call into the show at 607-242-1582. Explain why this is wrong. Explain how the context has been missed. Please explain how I'm misunderstanding the crowds that we are seeing, which would give me every reason to believe when I see those crowds only for one candidate and not the other. Tell me, how am I misunderstanding it? And you can't tell me, well, Mike, he only has 100 people and everything else is going out on social media. So are the Trump rallies. There are right now, if I was looking for it, I can go and see a Trump rally in Ohio, in New York State. I can go into many other states, and I will be able to see evidence, just like Joe Biden is putting out his speech. I'd see the same thing for President Trump. So they're both using social media. Their audiences are finding it on social media sometimes, because sometimes we have people like Twitter that are suppressing that information. But sometimes, even as they commit perjury, we do see that we see that they're still getting out to the public. So you're not saying, by saying Joe Biden's doing it online, so is President Trump. So what are you actually saying? And yet I still see tens of thousands more people actively excited and talking about and appearing in states that are absolutely going to be, as they say, a landslide against President Trump, according to the polls. New York State is the bluest of blue states. And since Reagan, New York State has not voted for Republicans, although this may be an exception in the year. And yet, we have at this second, in New York State, there is not one rally, car rally, actually any rally that I'm aware of for Joe Biden. And of the rallies that may be happening, I don't know of a single one that has drawn up to 100 people in New York State right now today. But I can point out at least 3 counties that are having Trump car rallies of hundreds of cars right now. Hundreds of cars in several parts of New York State right now. And you don't see one for Joe Biden that says anything, and I've not seen a rally for Joe Biden that says anything except Orange Man bad. So it's, again, still about Trump. It's not about Biden. That tells me that, yeah, he has an overwhelmingly good chance of the majority of the American public's mind. And when you put that in balance with what he has actually done, both economically, for blacks, for Hispanics, the improvements that he has provided them to small businesses and unemployment, when we look at the economy, when we look at world peace, the world is more peaceful. We have 3 Nobel Peace Prize nominations because the world is more peaceful today than it was 4 years ago. Yeah, when I put it all in balance, yeah, he's going to win. So I would say, and there's other reasons why I specifically go to 55%, which is analysis and going through some of the numbers. And yes, I do use some of the polls in trying to determine that. And it's somewhat arbitrary as well, like every poll, like every prediction in this election and every election. So I admit that freely, but that's where I get 55%. Michael J. mentions that there are 30,000 ballots where were sent to the wrong address in Pittsburgh. Yes, actually there's 50,000. There's another issue with ballots in Pennsylvania. Oh no, that's I was thinking Ohio. But yes, 30,000 ballots were sent to the wrong address in Pittsburgh. We had badly named thousands of people in Brooklyn who had ballots that had the wrong name. New Jersey has ballots that are pre-filled out. I have been talking about that a little earlier in the show. Joe says, sent-in ballots, I'm sure, are going to be disappearing unless they're personally in person. Making that vote count are going to be misplaced. Yes, there are ballots that are misplaced. We know this for a fact. It has already been happening. Why has Trump gone overseas to make deals and agreements and Joe Biden has not? Because Biden doesn't care? I don't know. He won't answer that question. Biden's been asked about these questions. He won't answer them. But he did go overseas, or no, That's not quite right. The Obama administration did go overseas, and they did negotiate the Iran nuclear deal, which involved paying Iran hundreds of billions of dollars. And even then Secretary John Kerry is quoted in the news media, as I have covered previously on different shows. He has stated very clearly that, yes, giving Iran all that cash is giving money to the greatest sponsor of terrorism in the world. And yes, that may result in funding of terrorism globally to some degree. He said it. It is a fact. The quote is verifiable. You can look it up for yourself. And even though Google may bury it, it may be shadow banned, so it's going to be harder to find. But yes, John Kerry, Iran nuclear deal, paying payments to Iran will help global terrorism. You can find it, and that is verifiable. He said it. That's what Joe Biden has done overseas. That's his deals and agreements. He has actively participated in, to some degree, helping increase the amount of terrorism in the world. Well, yeah, it was Obama. It was Obama's administration, and part of that administration, as vice president, was Joe Biden. He had massive influence in it. And that means he is also, to some extent, culpable and represented. It's partially his fault as well. That's how it goes. If I'm involved in a riot, the riot winds up burning down a building and there's someone inside the building and that person dies, as happened in Minnesota, as we have seen been reported, then you know what? Being part of that protest, that riot, is culpable. You're partially responsible for that person who was murdered. And we've seen that in several riots. Now, folks, please do remember, even though I keep saying and I keep asking for the far left, members of, Indivisible New York, members of Citizen Action, members of Plot, Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, Antifa, the Democratic Socialists of America. I keep asking for them to come in and comment. They never do. I do this every week, over and over and over again. They never do. They can, but they won't. Because the evidence is very clear, I believe. But also remember, you as well can call in at 607-242-1582. The lines are open. You are free to call us. Also, you can, as you can see on the screen, we have people who are typing in from Facebook, from YouTube. You can, of course, also do that. But the phone, in case you don't want someone to see that you actually type something, because there is a lot of fear right now for a lot of people to be identified, because they are afraid of some kind of crazy group of progressives and socialists, kind of like here in DC, where we are seeing the evidence that they are willing to come out and they are going to take direct action, whatever that's supposed to mean, against the people they don't like, the enemies of the state. They're going to take direct action against the enemies of socialism and progressivism. I am paraphrasing and quoting, but that is the intent. That is the context. There it is. The left-wing group's website boasts that we're getting ready for an uprising. Now's the time to get involved, so we're ready to hit the streets. An uprising? Civil unrest? Hey, where did I say that earlier in the show? Where did we hear that before earlier in the show? Well, that was coming from none other than the Associated Press, that instead of saying riot, we're going to say unrest. And that's what they're getting. They're gearing up for an uprising, an unrest, a riot. This is terrifying, folks. This is really terrifying information. But it is counteracted. You can counter this. And by the way, if you're wondering, how effective has the AP saying that we're going to use the word unrest instead of riot? How effective is that? I'll show you. Coming from CBS in Philadelphia, they are saying that that there has been unrest. And it is Okay, here it is. It's been a difficult week in Philadelphia, and on Halloween, city officials decided not to have a curfew. Philadelphia police say that the civil riots that we have seen on TV, in videos, on Twitter, on the major news stations, the buildings being broken into, the robberies, the stealing, the looting, those crimes that following the police-involved shooting death of Walter Wallace Jr., has led to the arrest of 225 people. You don't arrest people because there is an unrest, because there is a disruption, because, there is something that may somehow be connected to race. It isn't. That's not a crime. It's not a crime to be whatever race in America. It is a crime to break into a store and to steal and to loot and to destroy that building and to burn down things and to attack a police officer and to cause those officers to go to the hospital because they've been run over by a car. 59 officers have been treated for injuries sustained during the, as CBS calls it, and I want to be very clear, 59 officers treated for injuries sustained during the unrest. I'm sorry, if it's an unrest, if it is a mostly peaceful, and I want to be clear about that one. If it's mostly peaceful, people aren't going to the hospital. There is nothing in peaceful that results in someone going to a hospital. If someone is going to a hospital, it is not peaceful. It is not mostly peaceful. It's not even close to peaceful at all. Please, 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 I want to hear from the far left. And I want to hear, again, not Democrats, because I think the rank and file members of the Democratic Party are regular, normal people, and they would agree with me. Please, please, socialists out there, BLM, plot, please explain to me, how can you be mostly peaceful and someone is going to the hospital? How can you be nonviolent and destroy property and injure human beings? Please explain that to me. Because I guarantee you, if I as a Republican were to do anything and someone were to be hurt, it's never going to be reported that this Republican was mostly peaceful. They will never report that. And they will never call it a unrest. They'll call it what it would be: rioting, violence, looting, stealing, crimes. Remember the Chaz in Seattle, or otherwise known as the CHOP? Crimes, domestic abuse, women being raped, extortion of businesses. That was an unrest. No, it's not an unrest. Those are crimes. You can believe in this and you can support it, but if you're going to, be honest with what you are supporting, be honest with what it is. These are crimes. These people are criminals. This is un-American. Be honest with yourself about it. At least that's the way I see it that way. I have no reason to believe it's not like that. Same thing in Vancouver with the shooting, on the passing of the shooting of Kevin Peterson, which at this moment, as best as we can understand, is based on the same thing as what happened in Philadelphia. A man armed with a weapon confronted police and got killed. Now, that may or may not be true in the Kevin Peterson case in Vancouver, Washington State. We believe, and the initial statements have said, that Kevin had a gun and that he was firing at police officers and then was shot and killed because he was selling drugs. But with Walter Wallace in Philadelphia, he assaulted police officers. He had a knife in his hand, was told to drop it, didn't do it, attacked officers, and got shot and got killed. And in both of these cases, and let's assume that the protesters, that the rioters, the looters in Washington State, in Philadelphia, in New York, let's assume that they're right and that this was horrible. The police did this. Why in the world does that mean Fantastic. Let's go out and burn Bob's car dealership. Let's go burn the Burger King. Let's go burn down Sally's house. Why? Why in the world would you do any of that? Why in the world does that justify it? Even if the police were wrong, which in these cases, like most of the cases throughout the entire summer, that is not correct. It does not seem to be justified. That they were justified shootings, as has happened throughout most of the summer, most of this year, most of several years. Once you get past the initial headline, the truth seems to be that these people were causing their own deaths by assaulting officers, usually with weapons, deadly weapons. And when we get past that and we look at it, it's like, really? What are we dealing with here? What justification is that? Why should we see $1 billion of damage across the country? Why are we seeing hundreds of people made homeless, hundreds of businesses destroyed, thousands of businesses destroyed, people's lives economically and emotionally destroyed forever? Because someone else did something bad, so everyone, thousands upon thousands, tens of thousands of people have to suffer because of that one action. I'm not saying you can't protest. I am not stopping anyone from protesting. Protesting is a peaceful assembly. If you are peacefully assembling, you are not destroying hundreds of lives, thousands of lives. And if people disagree with me on that, please explain why. I've just given you a reason and a rationale and proof and evidence of how I come to that understanding. If you think I'm wrong, please tell me. All right, folks. So we've been talking about a whole lot of things here, and I didn't even get to the latest thing in Michigan, where we're seeing Governor Whitmer, who has already been told by the court systems, that from the Supreme Court, has already been told she's acting completely unconstitutionally with her abuse of executive powers. And what we're seeing is she's going out there and she's even doing more abuses of power, requiring people to be tracked with their name and their address just for eating dinner, which is an incredible abuse. And then there's also this insanely manipulative thing from a thing called transparency.tube, which is insanely trying to separate people and to arbitrarily define them as on the right or the left, and causing people to be segregated and well, just abused. And I disagree with it. And I do see your comment here, Joe. Celebrity and influencers are trying to have their votes favored to their favorite candidate. LeBron James has spoken about his political views, influencing as a political organization as being with the NBA. George Floyd, quote, can't breathe, quote, looked as a hero, masses of influence and people's property and people themselves, lives lost. How are these things such an influence, but real matters aren't? Chip implants, microchipping, track people. Okay. Yeah, I could care less what LeBron James thinks, quite honestly. I don't care what Ice Cube, Kanye. I've never really cared about any celebrity because they're a celebrity. I don't care what entertainers think. They're no different than any other human being. They're a person. Who cares? Really. Unless it's dealing with entertainment, I generally don't care a whit about what they think or what they do because they're no better than anyone else at all. And I have no reason to believe LeBron James has any more intelligence about politics than anyone else that I know, and probably less than many of the political junkies and individuals like myself that are out there that do this. So I could care less what he thinks. I know some people attribute because LeBron James, he's a basketball star, so he must be smart. I don't know where you get that connection. I don't know where that comes from. It doesn't make any sense because there's no proof for that. LeBron James, he plays basketball. He can throw a ball through a hoop. So he's a genius. He's fantastic. He is smart. He threw a ball through a hoop. I can get a 6-year-old to do that. Doesn't matter. Doesn't mean that's not a proof of intelligence. But anyway, if you've enjoyed the show today, normally it's about an hour and a half. We went over a little bit. I want to thank you for even being here. I hope you enjoyed the show. If we can improve the show, let us know. I love your comments, and I thank each and every one of you, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, anywhere you've seen it, that you've made a comment. And please continue to make comments, because we do look at that. We do try and respond on YouTube, Facebook, as we see the comments come in. We always are welcome to have you call in, and we thank you for that. And folks, we're going to be here next Sunday at 2:30 p.m. It will be after the election, and we're going to recover that. We're going to have a guest in, and then on Monday, after the election, we're going to be having a guest interview. A lot of stuff that's going to be happening. World's going to be very interesting. Most of all, I want to say, please go out and vote. Please vote in person for whomever you're going to vote for. Be safe. No riots. And folks, I'm going to see you next week, Sunday at 2:30. Thank you very much.